lecture chant. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas, having it to see and listen to remember and accept. I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Morning, everybody. Spring has sprung, and thank you all for being here. So today I'm speaking about chapter 26 in Thich Nhat Hanh's book, The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching. And in this particular chapter, he discusses the 7 factors of awakening. And those are called, in Sanskrit, those are called Sapta Bojjhanga. And that, of course, is a combination of the word bodhi, which we know to mean awakening or enlightenment, this awareness of what is happening in and around us, and anga, which means limb, as of a tree. So this is also translated, and you might see it as the 7 limbs of enlightenment. And we've actually read about and discussed each of these factors, some in length, some not, already in our study of the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, and in many of the discourses that we've already taken a look at. So you'll recognize them. They're mindfulness, investigation of phenomenon, diligence or effort, joy, ease, concentration, and letting go. And you'll remember that upon his enlightenment, the Buddha said that all living beings have the basic nature to awaken, that we have everything we need. But most of us simply don't know it yet, and so we suffer. So the potential of each and all of these 7 factors of awakening are already inside of us, but likely not yet fully realized. Thich Nhat Hanh relates that the Buddha actually was reluctant to share his insights that he experienced after he had enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. In fact, he sat for a number of days, I think 4, before deciding that, okay, there are many beings who would benefit from what I have realized. And so he did offer these concrete ways to help us all to wake up. And these 7 factors, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, and I quote him, offer a description of both the characteristics of awakening as well as a path to awakening. So imagine each factor as a large limb on a tree, and each limb is growing stronger and bigger and longer every year with new growth, just as does our own enlightenment, our own awareness. And as we know, enlightenment doesn't happen like in a flash, being considered complete in a moment, at least not for most of us. It is growth over time, and it requires all 7 factors to realize its full potential. The 7 factors of awakening are kind of like medicine. We need to know which is the right one for a mind. When the mind is excited and restless, the antidotes might be the practices of ease, concentration, and letting go. When the mind is sluggish, the antidotes might be investigation, diligence or effort, and joy. Ultimately, the 7 factors are, and practicing one develops all 7 at the same time. And just briefly reminding you in a sentence or less of the other limbs, if you will, and then there are 2 that I'll be going into more in more depth. But the first limb of mindfulness, which we know always arises in the context of relationship with ourselves, with other people, other things, our breathing, our walking, our feelings, and all the phenomena around us all make up the relationship in which mindfulness arises. The second factor is the investigation of phenomena. And we are really by nature rather curious, and the beauty of investigating shows itself most poignantly when we simply open and allow things to reveal themselves as they really are. The third and fourth factors of effort and ease I'm going to talk about in just a minute. The fifth, joy, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, comes from touching things that are refreshing and beautiful, within and outside of ourselves. The sixth factor is concentration, what we know as samadhi, in which we point our mind energy toward an object so that our mind is still and focused. And lastly is letting go, often called equanimity, transcending any idea of a separate self. As I thought about this chapter and the 7 factors, there were 2 that were really feeling especially significant to me at the time. That's the third factor of virya, which is translated into many different words in English, actually. Effort, energy, diligence, perseverance, vitality. And Thich Nhat Hanh includes in this list of synonyms continuous practice. And the other one that seemed important to me was the fourth factor of ease. And in fact, Thich Nhat Hanh says that diligence is always accompanied by ease. And when I read this, I stopped for a moment because I felt, I'm pretty certain that there have been times in my life where I've been very diligent, but did not have anything near the quality of ease. So this piqued my interest, of course. So let's look at what Thich Nhat Hanh actually shares and writes about virya, this energy, this effort. In Buddhism and in our practice, the source of our energy, in his words, might come from mindfulness or investigation and faith in practice, faith and trust. He states that energy is not the result of just our good health or our wish to achieve some goal, material or spiritual. Rather, he says, it's a result of feeling there is some meaning to our life. And when I read this, I also felt in me the connection of the partnership of effort and ease, which we'll talk about in a minute. So in our practice and in Buddhist teachings, it's pretty much a given that there's really no way around having to use and cultivate energy if we want to make any progress on a spiritual path or any path for that matter. Something I imagine you all have experienced. And our sustained practice, what we do here in our practice in Buddhism, can be really hard work, as we all know. And virya is the effort and the energy that's required on and off the cushion in order to create change, to stop something already in motion, such as a habit, or to redirect energy or to start something new. Of course, it's not only relatable to our practice, because it can say that all things are related to our practice, but recently in my life, I've made a commitment to myself to resurrect this habit of daily exercise. And I have to say that there's this thought in the back of my mind that I would really, really just like to fast forward to 3 or 4 months from now. And when my exercise routine is just a normal part of my daily life, I'm feeling good, knowing how good it makes me feel and how healthy it makes me, and being naturally motivated to continue. In other words, I'd really sometimes like to have all the benefits and none of the struggle of keeping it up. And I would just love the energy and ease of that. And I might like to just be able to skip over the willpower part. And maybe we have felt this in relation to our Buddhist practice. If only we could take one big step that plops us down, say, into some sort of deep realization of and a conviction that we are intimately connected to all beings. We know this, but if we could jump to that so that any frustration that grows or anger that comes up, we might feel in relation to others, wouldn't arise in the first place. And we wouldn't have to work at not indulging it. But it's not like this, as we know. It requires effort. You know, in relation to this, I really like this short story that's told by Tenzin Palmo. Some of you might know her. She's a nun in the Tibetan tradition. And you might know her from her experiences of living for 12 years in this 10-foot by 6-foot cave in the Himalayas. And one day during her training, she encountered a group of monks. And these were ordained monks who engaged in particularly rigorous practices, like living as hermits, taking very little food. And one thing they were particularly known for is sitting out in the cold with wet sheets all around their body and drying the sheets with an energy they summoned from within them. This is pretty austere. And they were renowned, of course, as spiritual adepts. And one day, one of the monks told Tenzin, "You think we yogis are doing some very high, fantastic, esoteric practice here. And if only you had the teachings, you also could really take off. Let me tell you, however, that there is nothing I am doing that you have not been taught. The only difference is that I am doing it and you aren't. And this is virya, the energy and effort to just do it and keep doing it, even in the face of our suffering and the suffering of others. And in this just doing resides all the factors of awakening, whether it is our practice, our exercise regimen, or showing up here on Sundays, as we do over and over again, week after week. Nothing special, just doing. And in the doing is the meaning. Virya as a result of feeling there is meaning to our life. Effort or diligence, it must be said, is not infinite, of course. We cultivate ways to sustain it by finding the middle way, perhaps. And obviously, there must be awareness of our own physical wellness, meeting our specific needs related to food and rest and exercise, etc., that sustain this energy and this vitality, while having a healthy sense of curiosity and discovery, which supports our mind energy. And as I mentioned earlier in this talk, Thich Nhat Hanh writes that virya is always accompanied by ease, and in his discussion of right diligence as part of the Noble Eightfold Path, he couples ease with joy. He says that when we have ease, joy, and interest, our effort will come naturally. If we feel joy and have interest in the transformative process of meditation, we will have the energy to participate and continue our practice. And how do we cultivate ease? Certainly our meditation practice supports this. We find a quiet place, we sit down, bring awareness to our body, noticing any places where tense or feel pain, and resting in this soft awareness of whatever is presenting itself. And this, of course, is true for our minds, bringing our attention to thoughts and feelings, moment by moment, without attaching to them. We're facing whatever arises. We're not running away. And with this comes our ability to just stay, and ultimately a sense of ease. The coming together of effort and ease is something I experienced last year in a very poignant way. As we had started to discuss our transition to a Sangha upon Mary Ellen's retirement, I was facing a decision, as were many of us, as to how I was going to contribute to and support our Sangha. and our offerings here in the Zendo. A decision about what my priesthood might look like. Questions about how I could best serve. And this was not an easy decision for me. In fact, I felt a good deal of resistance to even making a decision. Although I do remember saying, and some of you heard this from me, I'm not going to give Dharma talks every week. You know, we all need to have a little bit of control, I think, somehow. But I felt I could rely on three things that he mentions as sources of virya: my own mindfulness, my own investigation, and my own faith in the practice. So in these ways, I felt very supported, no matter my decision in the end. And I continued just to be inquisitive about what I was feeling and what I was thinking. So the effort and the perseverance that got me to this moment was a comfort to me in many ways. But it didn't get me to the point of being able to make the decision. And then one Sunday last summer, after our program, I drove home quite pensive as a result of our discussion. And the rest of the afternoon into the evening, I just sat or took walks, just being mindful of what I was feeling, not what I was thinking, just feeling, and just watching without judgment. And it turns out that later, I could see that one reason I couldn't make this particular decision yet had something to do with not feeling this energy I already had in relation to one of its sources. There is meaning to my life, which had developed through my decades of practice in life and came to bear at that moment. Another reason I had difficulty, I think, is that I hadn't yet felt and acknowledged the ease and the joy of showing up in this way, as you see me now. And once I could feel this decision physically, I felt it as ease and joy. And that evening, I picked up a pen and a piece of paper, and I easily and joyfully wrote down my commitment to myself and to you. And thinking back on it, I can say that I was finally able to, I guess, find a middle way regarding this decision. Perhaps you can think of decisions and situations you have experienced in which your effort and your commitment to sustain it, along with ease and joy, just kind of came together seamlessly and helped you through that moment. Of the 7 factors of awakening, I chose to just talk only about 2 today, but I'd like to remind you of Thich Nhat Hanh's final words in this chapter. He says that if we develop and maintain mindfulness in our lives, moment by moment, the investigation of phenomena will meet with success. Joy and ease are wonderful feelings, always nourished by diligence. Concentration gives rise to understanding, and when there is understanding, we can go beyond comparing, discriminating, and reacting, and can finally realize letting go. And those who arrive at letting go, he says, have the bud of a half smile, which proves compassion as well as understanding. And this is a reference to what's called the wordless flower sermon, in which the Buddha holds up a white flower, and only one person in the assembly understands, and that person smiles, signifying a direct transmission of the wisdom of the true nature of reality. And he ends this chapter by saying that 7 factors of awakening, if practiced diligently, lead to true understanding and liberation. And therefore, in his words, the 7 factors of awakening are the practice of love.